Today is February 19th, 2011 for Ben Trujillo testing. Okay, my name is Joseph Padilla and it's February 19th, 2011. I'm interviewing Ben Trujillo for the U.S. Latina World War II Oral History Project. We're in his home in Denver, Colorado. And then Mr. Trujillo has agreed to be interviewed. So we're going to start with some basic questions, okay? And tell me about your childhood, where you grew up and what your daily life was like.
Oh, I was born in a little town in New Mexico, northern New Mexico, Juarez, New Mexico. And basically, I think I was born in the time of the Depression. But I would say that my childhood, even though we were poor, we didn't know we were poor, because everybody else was poor. So therefore, I think I had the greatest childhood that anybody could ever have, because we learned, other than education, we learned a lot of things that we had to do at that time. So therefore, nothing was impossible for us to do.
What did you do daily? Did you do chores, those types of things?
We had general chores that we had to do by our parents. In other words, like chores, like we had to make sure that our mother had wood in the house, water, which we had no running in the water, so therefore, and no gas like we have today, or even electricity in their homes. So we had to provide that for the home, and it was our job to do it. It wasn't my father's, or it wasn't my mother's job to do. So therefore, before we even came in from playing outside, we had to do those chores every day.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I had one brother, and I had 5 sisters, and of all 5 of them, one of them is gone now. So therefore, I still have 4 left, and a brother.
Can you tell me their names and if they're older or younger than you?
Well, it was my brother. My brother, his name is Marcelino Trujillo. He's next to me, and then we had a sister that was named Dora, and she's the one that's deceased now. And then I have a sister that is I still call her by her name, but she's a nun, and her name is Sister Marciana, but to me she's Julia, because that's what she was born. So therefore, I never call her Sister Marciana, because to me she's still Julia, And then I have my sister Marie, and then I have another one by the name of Josie, and then I have another one by the name of Stella.
And were you the oldest?
I was the oldest, yes. Even though I had an older brother, but he died when he was a child, a small child. So therefore.
What was his name?
John.
Okay. Did you have to help take care of your siblings?
That was a funny thing about that in those times. I think more or less, we took care of ourselves. I didn't think I don't remember taking care of anybody, not that I remember, but because, I guess we were pretty independent in those days, that we took care of more or less ourselves.
Mm-hmm. What kind of things would you do together?
Oh, we just played together. We played out of nothing, because we didn't have any toys. So therefore, we made more or less our little toys that we played with. And then of course, evening came, then we had to do our homework for school, so we all got around the kitchen table, and with a coal oil lamp is what we had for to do our homework, and we did our homework for the next day.
Do you have any other specific memories of your childhood?
Well, yeah, I had our memories, but I don't know. In those days, my grandmother was left. My grandfather died, so my grandmother was left all alone. I'm not sure, but I think it was the tradition that always the oldest child had to go spend some time with the grandparents. So I went to spend it with my grandparents, and my grandmother had a small farm, and she would farm it. She had somebody come in and do the planning, and then she would take me with her to pull the weeds at the farm, and that was hard work because she'd get up in the morning. I don't think she had a clock because as soon as the sun came up, it was time to go. And then we didn't come home until you couldn't see anymore.
How old was she to do that?
Well, at the time, she must have been around, I would say around 65 at the time, when that was happening. She died when she was like 79 years old. But she was a very, very tough little lady, So therefore, but she taught me a lot of things about, I wouldn't say farming, because, but she did teach me, like for example, how to preserve their food, because they had absolutely no refrigeration and no electricity to do anything. So therefore, they taught you how to preserve their vegetables that they produced, and then how to process them and cook them.
Wow.
And she taught me that, not necessarily like in a class, but by watching her and doing and things that she did. She taught me a lot.
What was her name?
Fidencia Trujillo.
Was that in Watros also?
No, they lived in a little village that is about 3 miles from Watros. Further, I think it's east of I-25 today. At that time, it was 85. Towards the National Monument of Fort Union, a little village by the name of Tiptonville. I don't know where it came from, but that's where they lived.
Okay. What were your favorite places to be when you were a child? What was your favorite places to hang out or to go when you were a child?
Well, there wasn't any favorite places. We just hang around the other kids that lived in Watros and also in Tiptonville, and my first year of school, my first grade of school, I went in Tiptonville, which was a one-room little schoolhouse, and there they housed from the first grade. There was no kindergarten, from the first grade to the 8th grade, so the teacher had to start at the first grade and then go to the 8th grade, the daily teaching every day. And I went there for 1 year.
And let me see. What traditions did your mother and father maintain from when they were children as they grew up? Do you remember any traditions that your family had?
Like what?
Certain types of food, or how you celebrated Christmas, maybe something special for your family when you were small?
My dad, because he died, when I was 14 years old, since I was the oldest, he died. My dad was a very industrial person, he could, he had all kinds of things that he did, my dad bought, at the time when we were little, he bought I think it was the oldest or the only Masonic temple building that they had in those days in that part of the country there. in New Mexico. And then that place had like a big dance hall. And he knew how to play kind of any instrument that he taught himself. Plus he also taught himself how to be a mechanic in in the industry. What he did. And he'd get together with the people in Watros, and every Saturday night they would have a big dance in that place. He wouldn't charge anybody anything, and then the musicians would come from the village, because mostly everybody in those days knew how to play some kind of an instrument. Everybody. They didn't need to go to a music school. They just learned themselves. You know, the people learned themselves, the men.
What type of music was it? Do you remember? Was it Spanish music or?
It was both. They had both kinds. They could play both kinds of music. You know, like in Waters, because everybody in the little town, even though, you know, we spoke Spanish, but everybody was bilingual. So they learned. I mean, we had to learn. We didn't have to. Let me put it that way. We never had to learn how to speak English or speak Spanish. We just grew up learning how to speak both languages. It was a common thing. It wasn't. In fact, the kids that came to Watros, Anglo kids that came to the school in Watros, they had to learn how to speak Spanish, because if they were going to get along, because they were, I mean, it was just something. Later on in years, after we all grew up, my brother ran into one of the young men that they were, because before my brother went into the military, he used to work for a oil drilling company. He ran into one of those kids that went to Watros in school in the first, second, third grade. He told my brother, Nino, he says, you know, the best education I ever got is when I went to school in Watros. He says, because you kids taught me how to speak Spanish, and now I can go anywhere.
That's pretty good. Did your family, did you felt they struggled economically back then?
If they did, they didn't know it.
Okay.
Which I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
But they did. I mean, it was not, I don't think it was carried over to us. Let me put it that way. Never was carried over to us.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't aware there was the Great Depression was going on?
We were aware of it only because I remember that there was a lot of people that were going through Highway 85, and they were going towards California, and they would stop in our town, a little town in Watros, and ask if they could maybe stay for the night, or if we could have some food to give them.
Mm-hmm.
And only I think that would be, of course, you know, I know that it was impossible for my dad, even though he had a car, to buy new tires, because there were no new tires.
Yeah.
So he had to fix the holes wherever there were with old tires.
Yeah. Did anybody in your family participate in the CCC or the WPA? Do you remember?
Well, my dad participated in the WPA. My dad did. And then I participated in the CC camps.
Can you tell us about it?
Well, the way it happened that I went into the CC camps, I had a cousin of mine, you know, and I was working, helping, you know, and I was only like 13 years old, I think, or 14, not even, yeah, 14 or 14 and a half. And I was working in this ranch, you know, and pretty soon my cousin and this guy in a real shiny pickup, OD color, you know, come over, drove up and says, I wonder what these guys want. So my cousin gets out of the car, and then he introduced me to this guy, and I said, so, well, what is? Well, he said, I wanted to speak to you about this project that we have, and he started telling me. I didn't listen much about it, but anyway, he told me. He says, well, you'll get if you sign up, you'll get I think it was $79 a month. And if you want to, we out of those $79 a month, we can send a portion of that to your mother, and then you can keep some yourself, like $35. Well, I figured I'm making more money there than I was making with these people here, because these people here only paying like 50 cents a day. So I said, I'll sign up. Okay. Okay, so I signed up. They said, well, we will pick you up and take you to the base camp. And that was the base camp was in La Cueva, New Mexico, which is going towards Mora, New Mexico. And by the way, that's in USA, because most people think New Mexico is another country. So when I showed up and I went and I was ready to go, my cousin backed out. So I go alone. I went all alone to the CC camps. So I ended up there getting all, because they induct you like if you went into the army, they had to get the shots, you had to, everything. They had to issue clothing, the new clothing that they wore. And anyway, I went to the CC camps. And while they sent me to Las Cruces, New Mexico, which I had never seen anything like that. Because, northern New Mexico is nothing like southern New Mexico. Southern New Mexico is desert, and I never. Anyway, I went over there. I think for about 1 week, I went out with the crews that they used to go out and do soil conservation work. It was hard work, in the sun. So anyway, but in the evening, I used to go to the library. So while I was in the library, there was a lot of young men, from Texas, Laredo, Texas, Galveston, and all those towns in Laredo by the border, And some of them, poor kids, had never gone to school, so they were struggling to write a letter home. So anyway, I was there, so I said, well, why don't you let me help you write a letter? So I started writing. Pretty soon, this guy told this one, and this guy told the other one, because the camp had about 300. So anyway, pretty soon I found myself writing letters every evening for these guys, and they were real nice individuals. And so one night I'm writing letters, and then here walks in the captain of the camp, So he says to me, what are you doing? So I told him, well, I'm helping these guys with writing letters. Oh, is that right? Yeah. So he asked me how long I've been doing, and I told him. And then he said, you like to go to school? Yes, I said, but I can't go to school, I said, because I'm in the camp, I got my duties to do. He said, no, I'm going to send you to school. So he made arrangements in Las Cruces in the high school there, and he would take me, not he, but a driver would take me in one of those fancy trucks that they had, to school, and then pick me up. But anyway, end of school there. So then the captain says, I tell you what we're going to do. School is out. They're having a cooks and bakers school and I'm going to send you to that. I said, cook and baker school? Yeah, he says, yeah. I said, well, how long is the cook and baker school? And he told me it's about 60 days or 3 months, depending on how we do. So I did. I went to another camp, another CC camp, but they would take you every morning and bring you back. So I went there, and I did. I liked it, you know, because it was all involved. It involved a lot of things, baking and cooking, but a lot of it was mostly reading and figuring out, you know, diets and everything else, which I had no idea, you know. I wasn't raised like on that kind of stuff. So when I finished, I did finish, and I came back. And when I came back to camp, you know, which I would come back every night, you know, and incidentally, I had to still do duties when I came back. So my duty that they assigned me while I was going to school, cooks and baker school, was a sandwich man, making sandwich for the boys in the field. So I had to make like around about 275 sandwiches, so that they would have for the boys going to school. So I would start I would start after supper. They had supper in the camp about 10 o'clock. I'd go to the mess hall, and then I would start making the sandwiches, and I would finish around 2 o'clock, and then I'd go. But I'd pack them in boxes, and they'd take them to school. But I had figured out, they had taught me more or less, taught me how to make 275 sandwiches, you know, and just lay out the tables, which they already had in the mess hall, and then put one slice of bread, and then another slice, and all the tables, and then put the lunch meat, and so on and so on and so on, until I got one sandwich, and they finished all the sandwich. So it was a very well thought of system. But when I finished school, when I came back, they said, well, we have a first cook and we have a second cook and we have things, but we don't have a baker, so you're going to be the baker. So that's what I did. I did until until they terminated, and I was in that camp in Las Cruces when Pearl Harbor happened. And I remember walking in the where we used to fall out for reveille in the morning when they came over the loudspeaker that Japan had attacked the United States and we were at war. And therefore, I don't think it wasn't a week that all our grown management personnel, they were CC camp people, but they were of higher grade, they were all gone. So therefore then they started disbanding and sending home the younger ones, like myself, and we came home. But it was to me it was a very learning experience, and one of the things that when I went into the military, when I did go, it was like nothing. Basic was like nothing to me, and taking orders was like nothing to me, and keeping my area clean was like nothing. Policing the area was nothing, because I had already learned that in CC camps.
Did you have any family members participate in World War I?
My wife's father was in World War I. He was in France, and I had an uncle of mine that was in World War I also. His name was Bennie.
Do you remember anything about his service in World War I?
The only thing I know is hearsay. So he earned the Distinguished Service Medal over there. I don't know I really don't know what happened to him because he never came back. So we don't know whether he stayed in France or he died over there or what. But I do know that I do remember hearing that my grandfather got a letter from the War Department saying that he had earned the Distinguished Service Medal.
Wow. Would you introduce your wife and we'll have her tell about her father?
Luis,
Hi there.
Okay.
Hi there. Can you say
you
your
want to sit
name?
over here?
No, she's good because we're going to continue. We'll talk to her in a few minutes. So, do you want to introduce yourself and
Okay, my name is Louise. Maiden name Archuleta Trujillo.
can you tell us first about your father and his
My
service
father,
World War One?
he was a miner for many years after he came back from the war, and but apparently he came back with, they had been gassed or something. But he worked in the mines for many years, and after he couldn't, he was not able to do anything. He went to the VA hospital in Albuquerque, and he decided, I don't want to be here, I want to go home to my children. So we had moved to Watros from Red River, and he said he didn't want to be away from us, so he came back and he died there.
How old was he?
He was 37,
Wow.
very young, yeah.
There's the picture behind it.
Yeah. Where is he?
Oh, right here.
No,
Yeah, there's one.
there's a soldier up. That's him.
Yeah, that's him.
Wow.
His name was Julian.
So yeah, that's like
He was a good father.
excellent.
But he died when I was 12. So
And so you were raised without a father then?
we were raised without a father, just like Bennie. Yeah.
So how many siblings did you have in your family?
There were 8 of us, and 2 boys and 6 girls. The 2 boys have died. The 6 girl out of the 6 girls, there's still 4 of us left, or 5. 5 of us left.
So you were 12 when your father
My
died.
father died, yeah.
How old were you when your mother died?
My mother's still. When did she die? About 5 years ago.
Oh no, more than that. More than that. She was 84, remember?
Okay,
So I
maybe
don't
10
know.
years ago.
Maybe 10.
Yeah, she died of Alzheimer's.
Oh, and her name?
Her name was Amalia.
Amalia. Okay, I'm going to ask Ben
Amalia
again.
Trujillo.
Yeah, her maiden name was before she
Wow.
married Archuleta.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know, there's a lot of Trujillos in New Mexico.
So, how old were you when your parents died?
Well, when my father died, I was 14.
Can you tell us what happened?
Well, my father used to work for the state of New Mexico. He was a heavy equipment mechanic, and they had gotten a call that they had needed to repair a crusher that was in Clayton, New Mexico, and so another man that was with my dad came to pick him up, and he was a welder, so he picked my dad up, and because since he was a welder, he had to carry that welding thing, so he picked my dad up, and on the way to Clayton, and it was in January, and it was a blizzard going up there. But anyway, the pickup or the truck that they had a blowout, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. So they decided to just wait until daylight to fix the thing to go, because so they left the motor running, and my dad was as tall as me, which is nothing. So he lay down on the seat, and the other man was about a big guy, so he couldn't lay down, so he sit up and cracked the window. But my dad lay down on the seat, and let the motor run to keep the truck warm. And unknowingly to them, the truck had run over something and had put a hole in the muffler, and all that seep into the car, into the truck. And my dad died then, and the other man, he survived. He was all right, but he never was the same person after that. And my mother died here in Colorado, and she died in October of probably about 10 years ago also.
She died before my mother died.
Yeah, yeah. So but both of these two ladies, raised, all between the two of them, they raised a lot of children.
It's
A
pretty
lot of
good.
children.
Widows, yeah.
Can you tell me about your school years?
My
How many years you were in school?
Well, I went to elementary school in Watros, and then I went to high school in Las Vegas for about 2 years, and then all these things came up, and I had to leave to help my mother. And then when I came back, I thought of going in, since I was a combat medic and I learned a lot, in the military about medical field. I wanted to do that, but time was coming faster and faster, and then Luis and I, even though we've known each other since we were little kids. So, and then when I came back, she's the one that picked me up, because you come back with one leg, and at that time, today it's a little different, but at that time, I said, well, geez, he's hurt, but she didn't worry about that. So that's when we got married. So then, after we got married, I decided to go to school. So I took at that time the government had a program where you could go take an aptitude test, and they would direct you to the different fields that you could go under the GI Bill right that would be more suitable to whatever you were more or less adapted to. So I went to watchmaker school because I figured that if I couldn't go back to medical thing because it would take too long, So I went to watchmaker school, and I went for 2.5 years to watchmaker school until I graduated from there, and then I worked here and there in small jewelry stores until Louise called me one day and she said, "You know what, Benny, I think you ought to go. I talked to this guy. He says in this jewelry store, and I think you ought to go to work for these people." And she had talked to the manager of which they had just bought some stores in Colorado, the Zale Corporation, and I went to work for them. But she's the one that instigated that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
When you were in school, did you participate in any clubs or activities that you remember?
When I was in school in Las Vegas, I played in the high school band.
What instrument?
Trumpet. That.
What kind of things did you do with your friends after school?
You mean While I was going into elementary school.
Or and even in high
In
school.
Watros?
Yeah.
Hide and seek.
Oh,
Break,
and when we were kids in Watros, you know, heck, there was no such a thing as not knowing what to do. We played until way dark.
Go to the lake in the summer and spend all day at the lake,
Yeah,
just eating
Yes.
green apples. Huh.
eating green apples and playing kick the can and playing crack the whip and
Crack
all
the
those
whip,
games,
yeah.
you know, which we played, and everybody played. Everybody in the little town played.
What lake was that?
Well, it was a ranch that had a lake, and the ranch was called the Phoenix Ranch, you know. And it's
It's called the Phoenix Lake.
yeah.
But after high school, when you got older, what type of things did you do? Did you work in school?
Well, you
After
were in
that,
California,
when I went to high school, there was no such a thing as a downtime. You know, you had to work. You had to work on whatever you could get and help our parents. I had to work, and so like her, she had to work with her mother, and we had to work to help our parents. That's why I went to San Francisco and went to work on the shipyards, because I had to work to help my mother and my kids. Unfortunately, my brother Nino, he also died and entered the military at real young age, younger than me.
Did you think that your education was about the same that your brothers and sisters received?
No, because my sisters got more education than I did, and my brother, I got a little bit more than my brother did, because my brother didn't get any. The education that my brother he got in what he called dumb school in the military. That's what he called it.
Mm-hmm.
But he got it basically, in other words, my brother grew up in the military. So.
Do you remember what was going on in the country and your community when you're growing up in the 40s?
What?
Do you remember any big things going on in the country or in your community during the 40s as you grew up?
No, I don't. I don't remember in the 40s, you know, that there was any big things going on. Communication in those days was nothing. In the country, especially the country, you know, we listened to radio, and some of us, you know, and a lot of them didn't have radios because they didn't have electricity.
Were the two of you dating in school then?
Well, we used to write notes to each other when we were in grade school, and we had a friend deliver them.
Yeah,
They
like
were
nobody knew, you know.
love notes.
Like nobody knew, you know, everybody knew. Except,
Mm-hmm.
But then we grew up very together.
So when did you start getting serious with dating and
Well,
knowing?
not till he got out of the service, when he decided to come to Denver. Because we had heard he was coming home from the service, and this girl and I decided to go see Bennie. So she said, I think he's going to want me. I said, no, I don't think he's going to want you. I think he'll want me. So we went. We had a bet, she and I. She has since died, but anyway, we were good friends. We went, and then we just got together, and we got married over there. We came back to Denver.
yeah, we came back to
Together?
Denver, and then I had been altar boy, you know, for these priests, you know, for when I was, I don't know how long, you know, I was growing up, you know. Anyway, I called him from Denver. I called Father Hallahan in Wagon Mountain, New Mexico, and I called him, hey, Father, you know, and of course he remembered me right away. And I told him, I said, you know, I want to marry Louise, and we want to go get married. He said, when do you want to get married? I said, well, whenever you have time. I said, I got time now, anytime. you get it and then come
So
on.
we went on the bus.
We went on the bus back to Watros, and we went to the church. We went to the church in Wayman, and we got married right then and there.
How old were you, the two of you?
18. We were 18?
No, no,
No,
I
we
was
were
20.
21
20.
already.
No, 20.
Oh, 20, because I was 21 when you were born.
Yeah, yeah,
We
I
were
was 20.
Okay, pretty good. So, going to some of these questions here. What do you call about the time World War II started? How old were you, and then we can talk also about your brother going into the service.
How old was I?
Yeah, when World War II started,
Well, I think that when World War II started, it was I was at the CC camp parade ground or assembly ground, and I heard it, and I must have been around 16 years old when that happened, and of course, it didn't quite hit me other than the fact that we were at war at that time, A little later on is when it started hitting me more and more about it, And, the funniest thing about that is that anybody that I knew, and of course, we were all like when we were raised in Watros, everybody was Hispanic. And there was no negatives about not going into the military. No negatives at all. Everybody wanted to go. Everybody wanted to go and do what they had to do. None of them wanted to not shy away from that. And even the younger ones that couldn't go, they all wanted to go.
and that's good because next question is, would you say you were like most other Latinos of your generation?
I would say yes, because none of the Latinos that I knew in the military were persons that complained about anything that was assigned to them. Very few Latinos and that I knew were assigned to the Air Force or artillery or anything like that. We were all mostly assigned to infantry, which it was okay because at first you felt that you were assigned to the lowest unit in the service, but nevertheless, once you understood it and you knew what the infantry did, it was like this. You would say, "Well, Jesus, I'm in the right place, and I'm in the place where I can make a difference."
You were proud.
So that you were proud. I know that when we used to go to, even when we were still in the United States, and we used to go to, on a pass, those hats that you wear, some of them wear like the policeman hats. Well, you had to buy those. They weren't issued to you. There was not GI issue. You had to go to the PX and buy those. But I didn't have the money to do it, so I never bought one. And most of the soldiers didn't buy any. But when you went downtown, and the border on those, what you call overseas caps, that they use, the border, it was sky blue, and that was for the infantry. If you've seen one of those borders, caps on one of the soldiers, you always kind of looked up to it because you knew they were infantry boys.
They were combat.
You knew they were combat infantry soldiers, and if you see a infantry badge, you'll see that it's blue, has a blue background. And but mine was purple, since I was a medic, but that was okay because I was with him, you know.
Yeah. We're gonna get into the war in a minute. We're gonna ask a couple questions about the home front. Do you remember rationing during the
No,
war?
I don't remember rationing because I was gone already
Mm-hmm.
when rationing started. So I heard about it.
We got the ration books.
Luis told me about it, but I never knew anything about it.
We were rationed
Your family
a
was.
lot, yeah.
And would you ever describe yourself as being political or anything like that before then or since then?
No, we were not political, not political at all. You know, I used to go. Uh, I used to go with my grandmother to the things because my grandmother was a real Republican, but my father was a Democrat, and I used to go to when they used to have their little political meetings that my grandmother used to take me to. But the only reason I used to love to go because they used to give you a little button with a picture of the guy that was running, and so you put it on. You wore it all day long. You didn't even know who they were, but you wear it all day long. You know, even when you were going to school, you had your little button on. You know.
Would you consider yourself a Democrat or Republican now, or what are you?
Well, I consider I'm a registered Democrat. However, I always think for myself. In other words, I don't consider just because you're a Democrat that you have to vote for a Democratic person, because you know it depends who's running and what their views are. You have to study that. And I have to study that and then do what I want to do, because I think I have earned the privilege of voting for whoever I want to, and not be tied down to the Democratic Party the way they are in Washington, D.C. I am a person that likes to make up my own mind who I want to vote for, whether he's Democrat or Republican. Like when we came back and then General Eisenhower run for president, naturally I was going to vote for him because he was my general at that time, and I respected that, and I don't care who was running for anything else. You know, I would have voted for President Eisenhower.
Do you remember discussing things with your family like that when you were young?
Oh, my family, like my daughter Julie here, and my brother Benjamin, my son Benjamin, that passed away. You know, they were pretty much very intelligent people. That they would always, in other words, they would always research the persons that they really wanted to vote for. You know, and I didn't have to influence. I gave them my views of what I thought, you know, but that didn't make any difference. They more or less researched the candidates they were going to vote for.
Okay. We're going to get into the enlistment draft and then basic and then overseas and then after the war. So how old were you when you enlisted and where were you?
I was about 17 years old at that time, barely turned 17, and I was working in the shipyards in Alameda, California, and I worked during the day in the yard, in the ship, and then at night they would come over and ask if anybody wanted to go to San Francisco, because the warships were coming in from the South Pacific, and they were damaged, and I would go down there, and I would get on the bus. They would not tell you to go. You say you get on the bus, and if you wanted to go, you go on the bus. You go, and I would go down there and work till about 2 o'clock in the morning. Then I'd come back and go and get some sleep and wake up in the morning and come back to work during the day. But then, like I told you they're having those rallies and everything else like that, and I couldn't help but wanting to go, and I just couldn't stand it. You know, I wanted to go, and yeah, so I did what I told you before. I went and I lied and I registered for the draft, which was a way of getting in, and I was lucky enough to get in, and they inducted me in San Francisco, and then from there I went to Presidio Monterey, which there they assigned me to. They assigned me to go to a camp, basic camp in Camp Barkley, Texas. Camp Barkley, Texas, in Abilene, Texas. And there I took my basic.
What was the date of your enlistment?
It was July 12th, 1943.
And why did you decide the Army?
You know, I had been working on ships, and believe it or not, they were so cold, like early mornings where even though it was California, you sat on those steel decks, which I had to do, sit on some of those steel decks, and the water was not like I used to see the water in New Mexico. Nice and clear water. It was like dirty, filthy water that they were on, and even though when I went in and I passed my physical, the Navy was standing right there because believe it or not, I got a journeyman's card from the sheet metal for the sheet metal union. At that age, I had to go to San Francisco and to pass a test in sheet metal, in air ducting and everything like that. And I got a union's card, a journeyman's union card, which they gave me a helper and everything. But you still had to sit on the floor, and that ground, that thing was so cold that I said, no, I'm not gonna do this. I don't want to go in the Navy. I don't want to go any more ships like that. I had enough of ships, even though I wasn't there, but I knew long enough to go. So that's when I decided to go in the Army. Of course, when I went into the Army, little did I know that I was going to be in water and dirt and mud.
And the wet foxhole.
And the wet foxholes, but it was okay. Like I said, to me it was not a hardship. It was something that we had to do.
How did your family react to you going into the service?
I don't know, because from the time I left, to go to work in the ships, I didn't come home, so I had no idea what my mother's reaction was when I left. No, I didn't know. My mother was the type of person, I guess, that kept more or less everything to herself. She grieved by herself. But I don't know what the reaction were of my sisters or my mother or anybody. I do know that I guess the reaction to my brother was more so than anybody, because he took off. He enlisted.
At that time, everybody was going into the service, so everybody was losing their kids to go. So everybody probably felt the same.
But that was a difficult time for a lot of these communities, huh? All these young guys leaving.
Because they were all leaving, yeah.
All right. Where did you go for basic training?
In Camp Barkley, Texas, in Abilene, Texas.
And what was the experience like?
Well, it was a different kind of climate than what we were used to, because you know they had those little barracks and this, and of course there was no insulation whatsoever and all. And you know, Texas is the summertime, and if it was in the summertime, it was horrendous. But it didn't make any difference. You could take your fatigues off, you know, and if you lay them against the wall like that, next morning, you know, they were straight up. You know, they were full of salt. You know, and so, but anyway, it was, for me. It was. I don't know. I don't remember having a hard time. I don't remember having a hard time at all.
Do you remember?
I remember that the heat was the thing that I couldn't adapt as well. But the the actual training, I didn't have any problem at all with it, or I didn't have any problem with the the drill sergeants or anything else like that. I didn't have any.
How long was your basic training?
I believe it was around 3 months. 3 months, and then when we got through, when we got assigned, the only thing I was kind of leery, I said, I wonder why we don't get rifles, you know. Well, you know, then when they said, well, we're going, when we finished basic, they said that we were going to an infantry division that had just been formed, and it was and the division was in Louisiana. They were on maneuvers in Louisiana. So, you know, they loaded us on a train, and I went to Louisiana, and then I was attached to this infantry division. It was in a regiment, 393rd Infantry Regiment, and at first, you know, I was kind of disillusioned because I could see nothing but rifles and everything else, and I didn't have any, and I thought, you know, maybe I'm not good enough to carry a rifle or anything like that. And I felt bad about it, you know, for a while, you know. And then as time went on, and more training, more medical training, more everything like that, I started feeling a little bit better about it, you know. And some of the boys, we only had like 3 Latinos in the medical detachment that I was in, that 1st Battalion.
Let's take a break because I need to change tapes. This is going to run out here. Ben Trujillo, and today is February 19th, 2011. And so you were talking about basic training, and you had arrived in Louisiana, and decision had already been made at this point that you were going to be a medic, and they made the decision. Can you
They
talk
made
about?
the decision.
Can you talk about how that happened?
Well, they would do an interview, more or less an oral interview for you, and a little small written interview for you, and then they would not tell you at the time that you were going to go here or you were going to go there. They would just say, well, we will advise you later of where you're going to go. So then you know, I guess they had already determined of where I was going to go, and the other 3 Latinos that went with me to this medical detachment with the 99th Infantry Division, which was on maneuvers at the time. So when we went over there, and naturally I didn't. When we went over there, we were just took more first aid training and so on and on, you know, learn all kinds of things, you know, how to give shots, how to do this, how to do that. And then, you know, the funniest thing about when they assigned me over there, I was considered like a litter bear. But then every time one of those infantry companies needed to go on a outing or a 20-mile hike or something like that, they would call me. They would call my name to go with the infantry as a raid man. So I would go, you know, but when I came back, I would come back. I remember the guy that was assigned for this company that I served with all my military life, time in Europe, and he was the one that was supposed to be the aid man for this company, but they always pulled him and took him back to the aid station, and I went out with his company.
So,
And I liked it because, you know, I got to know all the infantry boys really well, and they were good, very good to me.
so being a litter bearer, that's not as high as being an aid man, and so that
No.
was, and how would that work?
At that time, no.
Mhm.
No, not at that level when I was in Louisiana. No. No, and then when we came back, when we finished the training
Hello. Hi. How you doing? I wish you were here.
in Louisiana,
Yes, yes.
and we came back to a camp called Camp Maxey, Texas, in Paris, Texas, and there we finished. They did the additional training that we had to do. I was still considered that, but again, like I told you, every time the infantry company had to go
Mm-hmm.
on the field of any kind, I had to go with this infantry company and the sergeant, and that was okay with me, you know. But I'll tell you something. The one thing that helped me the most when I was in training in Camp Maxey, and it helped me tremendously, was towards the end, where the infantry division had done their training and it was ready to be deployed to wherever we were going to go, as nobody knew anything where we were supposed to go. So it was about a month prior to us leaving. They came over to the barracks, and they said the base hospital needs some help, and we want some volunteers to go down there. So I decided, well, I'll go down there. So I went, and then of course when we went down there, they came, the people, the personnel at the, or the staff at the hospital said, okay, we want to assign you to different things in the hospital that you're going to help with. So then they said, you're going to be in the, you're going to work in the skin and general analysis clinic. Okay, I said, fine. I didn't know what general analysis was anyway, but he said, and incidentally, he says, the morgue is attached to this clinic. I said, well, why do I have to worry about the morgue? You know, that's nothing to me. Nothing. That was okay. But in about a week after I had been in there working, you know, and helping, and I would help the doctors, which were all either captains or majors and everything else, you know, in the clinic. They would taught me how to give all kinds of shots, different kinds. There was a lot of different kinds. They taught me how to do that, and I was glad because they were teaching me something, really something. Then one day, it was a major comes over. He said, Benny, I want you to help me. We have to go and do something. I said, okay, I'll go with you. I said, well, yes, sir. I said, I didn't say okay, you know. I said, yes, sir. Well, I'm going with you. So I went with him, and we had to do an autopsy. He was one of the truck drivers in our units. I remember him, and he was a truck driver. He got crushed between two trucks, back to back, and I had to help an autopsy with him and another soldier, because the other soldier was like a stenographer. He took whatever the doctor they wrote down, you know. He wrote down. They didn't have recorders or nothing like that. So he wrote down everything, and I helped the doctor, you know. I mostly helping with the water hose. And at first it was really hard, you know. I guess about the first half hour was really tough, you know. I've never seen anything like that. But anyway, I helped him do that, and as a result was I ended up by helping him about a couple of times more on other. And I didn't know what, you know, what this would do for me. But later on, when we did go overseas, and then they had assigned me to the company that I've been going out with as a permanent combat medic in the front lines. I found out just how much that helped me cope with what I was coming across.
Does that mean that you learned more about the human body, so you know how to treat people?
No, it helped me mentally cope with it, because before, you know, you don't have those kind of injuries. You never knew about you trained about them, but how many of us ever seen in training a leg torn off, or an arm torn off of a thing, and knowing what you should do? Not that you always knew what you should do, but cope with it mentally. In other words, you mentally. But by me helping that major, you know, and seeing all that blood, you know, He conditioned me to to help these other guys a lot better, keeping my head straight instead of me breaking down and not knowing what to do.
That's excellent. And you said that you had a friend. Can you tell us about any friends you had at Basic that you kept through the war or anything?
Well, I had, there was, like I said, there was, let's see, no, there was 4 Latinos in the detachment. And this other friend that was in there, in the same detachment I was, he was from Las Vegas, New Mexico. His name was Arthur Tafoya. And the other 2, one of them was, one of them was from El Paso, and the other one was from Stockton, California. Now, Tafoya and I, more or less kept more. In other words, we're more together in the detachment. When we were with the detachment, when we got overseas, they all went different. I went in one direction, he went another one. And we were no longer in the detachment. We were we lived and ate and everything else with the infantry. So, but later on I learned that the other 2 had transferred to the infantry, because that's what they wanted to do. Both of them had wanted to go the infantry.
Were you trained in the use of weapons?
No training in using any kind of weapon at all. No.
Were you trained in, did they tell you about where you were going to go overseas, what countries, and about the people, what to expect once you got there?
No, none at all. I mean, we went by train from Paris, Texas, all the way to Providence, Rhode Island. Loaded up on we stayed in Providence, Rhode Island, I think overnight or 2 days. No, it was like 2 days, I think, because they had to give you your shots to go overseas. And then loaded up on a ship. We loaded up in late evening, and then when the next morning when I woke up, we were in the middle of so many ships that you couldn't see where the end was. You couldn't see anything. You could only see ships all around you in the sea already. And I understood that. I understood from just the gossip around the ship that we were somewhere in the coast of Canada.
How long were you at sea before you?
7 days. 7 days, and that was something else. That's another thing. Well, I was in the ship. There, the sergeant came and he said. Benny, you're going to help in the hospital ship. And I said, what am I going to do in the hospital ship? Well, you're going to, I said, I didn't know there were any patients, in the ship, because there was only like 5 beds in the hospital, ship, in the ship, He said, well, what you will do is you will go and you will bring you will see that they get their meals, and you will also check and see that the little hospital bed is clean and everything else. So I did. I said, okay. So I went and I worked in the hospital ship going overseas, which was great, because I tell you, if I had to go to the bathroom, I just went to the bathroom. The other guys, if they had to go to the bathroom, they had to stand in line, which was a block long. If they had to go to lunch, they had to get something to eat. They had to stand in line, and by the time they got through getting their food, they should go back and get back in line because it was ready to. They would stand in line for hours to get their meals, you know, because there was over. I think there was about 2,000 in one ship.
Do you remember the name of your ship?
SS Argentina
Excellent. And
What?
where did you land when you landed?
in Le Havre, France. Yeah. No. Well, we landed in Southampton, England, and we stayed in Southampton, England for. Not in Southampton, but in.
Just 1 second. And at Le Havre.
Yeah. Well, we were in England for a little while there. I guess I don't know what. But anyway, then it wasn't long. It was only like 3 days or something, or 4 days, something like that. And then they loaded us in LSDs. And then we were in the English Channel. Oh, must have been a day and a night or something like that. And then when we landed in Le Havre, when they said we were going to land, you know, then they lowered the big thing down, and that LSD couldn't come close to the end of the beach. So when he lowered down, they lowered down the big gate, you know, or thing they have in the front. You know, when we jumped out, and we jumped into about waist water, you know, and then we walk up the beach, and of course the beach had already been taken. The little town and the harbor being taken by Canadians, and then we moved in.
Do you remember the date?
No, not dates. The only thing I remember is it was sometime in October, I think.
October 1944.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was then, you know, that we went.
Was it different than you expected, or was it kind of like what you expected when you got there?
You know, the countryside was quite a bit like Huachos. You know, like the orchards and things like that. It was more or less like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't expect. Really didn't expect anything, you know, much, or had any idea what it would look like, other than a land that was way, way, way from where we came from. But the countryside was very much like Huachos, orchards and trees and things like that.
Did you have much interaction with the French people there?
No, I didn't have much. All I did know about the French people is that they were rude. They were rude, and most of them wouldn't. If you ask them a question, they would never answer it for you. They would never. In other words, like, they were not happy for us to be there, I guess, or I don't know, but I know that they were rude, you know.
And so, did you go into one of the cigarette camps, they call them, when you first got there?
No. What is a cigarette?
Oh, like when Lee was there, like the Lucky Strike camp, and they had names for them?
Oh, no, we had no camps. No, it was basically everything that our unit, the unit that I was in, did was we were out in the open, and and we were not in anything near any camp or anything like that. No.
What was a typical day like for you there?
Basically walking forward, and our outfit had little scrimmages with 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 the Germans, and usually occasionally artillery coming our way, and some going their way, and but you know. No big battles. My unit never came across a big city, so we came at a lot of farms, little villages, and things like that our unit took, you know, but no big cities, you know, like we never fought in big cities, like, you know, you see on the movies, you know, where these guys are fighting house to house and everything like that. No.
Did you start treating injuries right away after you got there?
Not for a couple of days, or 2 or 3 days there. No.
And
No,
so,
believe it or not, a lot of the things that you treated at the beginning on this is you treated like you were a dispensary, you know, because you were. That's the closest you were to a doctor. The infantry guys had to a doctor, so every little thing that happened to them, they'd come to you, and you would go ahead and do what you knew how to do. Like if they had an ingrown toenail, they had a blister on their boot, or anything like that, they'd come to you. And they had a cold, they'd come to you, and you would help them with that, you know. So it wasn't all, you didn't take care of just battle wounds, you took care of all the other little things that they had. And then you had to make sure, but you didn't have to make sure, but you would always go around and ask them, have you changed your socks today? Have clean socks? Things like that. And that's basically what you did, you know.
what was your living conditions like?
Well, we lived in at night, or whenever we stopped, we right away dug in, and we dug foxhole, and we stayed in the foxhole at night, and the next day we'd get up and move out, and there was no such a thing as staying in the house. We never stayed in the house.
What were the weather conditions like?
Well, when we first got there in October, and I guess part of September, it was very nice, you know, like it is over here. You know, it is nice weather, you know, nothing big. You know, we would, if we were far enough, some of us, sometimes, because, you know, not your unit is not always a point. Somebody else would take the point, another unit would take the point, and your unit would pull back a little bit. You're able to build a fire, and you get around the fire and things like that. But if you went up, if the unit happened to be out in the point, you didn't have anything like, you couldn't build a fire or nothing. So you had to eat. You ate your sea ration. Either you ate it out of this cold, or you ate it from a little, like a little candle, heating can that you heat it yourself, you know, and that was it, you know. But no, not very many hot meals. No hot meals from the kitchens. No.
What do you think was some of the most difficult things that you missed from back here? Things that were difficult to deal with when you were there day to day?
I guess I didn't miss anything other than because I expected more or less what was coming. I expected it. You know, I in my own mind in the United States where I was here and training and everything, I more or less imagined what it would be like. And
Were there other Latinos stationed with you in your unit?
no, no. When my infantry, my infantry company that I was with, which was Company D, they didn't have there wasn't any Latinos in that company.
You were treated different because you're being Latino?
You know, that's the thing that I cannot really understand, because I was known only by two names, Medic or Benny, one of the two. And nobody ever said to me that I was a Latino or was not a Latino. The only time I was a Latino was when I came back, but not then. Then I was just either a medic or Benny. Yeah. I had the lieutenant that was from infantry lieutenant. He treated me like, and Sergeant Dwayne, treated me like anything, that they took care of me. The Sergeant Dwayne and Lieutenant Steen would make sure that Benny got his rations, sea rations. Benny made sure that he was dug in. And when I had to go to the latrine, which it's the first thing they did when the unit, if we were not moving at night, they had to do was dig a latrine. If I had to go to the latrine, they would make sure that they sent an infantry guy with me.
Was that to protect you in case there was enemy in the area, or
Against snipers and things like that? But they made sure that somebody went with me. I don't know whether they made sure that somebody else went with the other guys. I'm not sure of that. But they made sure that they did that. And they made sure that I had the rations that I needed, like not supplies, not medical supplies that I had to have, but rations, like the food and things like that. They made sure.
how many other medics were in your company?
Well, there was other medics, and like Tafoya happened to be in Company C, which was down the line, But in my sector, it was only me.
Wow.
There, and the sector where my unit usually was about 40 men that I worked with, and they were like they carried machine guns, heavy machine guns, and mortars, and then they carry their sidearms, but they didn't carry the big M1 rifles that they had in Second World War. They carried carbines. They were a little smaller than the thing, because the machine guns, they had a tripod, and they had the ammo and the things. So they were pretty loaded up. Those guys were really loaded up, but they still had time to see that I had my rations and things like that.
Did you keep any kind of diary or any type of journal or anything?
Oh no, I didn't keep anything, because I couldn't hardly carry anything other than what I had, because I carried two big medical bags that I had compressed bandages in them, big ones, little ones, and then I had all kinds of other things that they had issued that came in the medical bags. I carried about 20 morphine syringes at a time, and each syringe had a half a grain of morphine in it. And I carry a big bottle of codeine tablets and things like that. But you know, I never knew that those things were narcotics, you know, because we were not into, I never knew it as a narcotic. All I knew about it, that there were pain, and that was supposed, if a soldier got hit, I was supposed to approach him and look in the severity of his wound. I would have administered morphine to keep him into going into shock plus the pain. And that's all I knew about it. I didn't know that it was a narcotic, that they use it for other purposes than what I did. I didn't know that the people could use it to get high, you know.
Did you want to talk about any of the soldiers you treated, or what types of actions you performed as a combat medic?
Oh, I remember one of them that was a real, it was this big tall kid, you know, and he's one that I remember the most. Is he was in his foxhole, and I really don't remember whether he was probably 6'3" or something like that, skinny kid, and he was one of the ammo carriers for a machine gun, you know, and either a grenade was thrown into his foxhole when he was in it, or it was I don't think it was a mortar, a small mortar, you know. I don't know what it was. I know that there was an explosion in his foxhole, and I went when we heard it, and then they said medic, and I ran over to the foxhole, and we pulled him out. I had to have help pull him out because he was a big guy. Pull him out of the foxhole, and his legs were all mangled up. And I remember he had I don't know where he got it, but he got a hook flashlight, GI flashlight. And I was always borrowing it from him. And he always used to complain, don't use it too much because I can't get batteries, you know. So I would use it when at night, you know, and tried to turn it off as quickly as I could. So before he left, so he had his flashlight. After I took care of him and gave him his morphine and tried to put compresses on his mangled legs, you know, and everything, and made sure that he got back to the aid station. He said, well, you're always using this, so you might as well take it from me, because I'm not going to use it, I don't think. When they fix me up, I'll come back. Because everybody wanted to come back, even though they got hurt so bad that they may die, but they always wanted to come back, like I did. Always wanted to come back to the front.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. They hated to leave the rest of the boys and not be with them. That's the way I felt. So he says, you can have my flashlight, Benny, until I come back, okay? I said, okay, I'd love to have it. So, and use it. So he said, just be sure not to use the batteries. Okay. And, you know, by that time, morphine had taken over, you know, and he started to doze off, and the leaders came and took him. And so anyway, I thought about him now and then, you know, as we're moving forward, you know, but about, I must have been 3 weeks or so, I got a letter from him. He was still in England, you know, but they were shipping him to the United States. And he wrote a letter to me telling me he was okay, and everything like that. And he said he was kind of, first he was kind of down, losing his legs, but you know, he had to be what he had to be. He said, incidentally, he says, but you can have my flashlight now. He says, you can keep it.
Isn't that something?
So I kept it and I used it all the time I was there.
Excellent. Were you involved in any major battles or engagements? that you recall?
Well, I was involved in, well, I would, you know, I was in the front of, on the Siegfried line front when the Battle of the Bulge started, and I went on all through the Battle of the Bulge, all through it, you know, and for some time they overrun a lot of the areas, a lot of the units, but for some reason they went behind us and we were cut off from our own American lines. So we were behind lines for I don't know how many days, you know. And after the Battle of the Bulge, then I was involved not involved, but I was in the Rhineland thing, which was after they took over the bridge that was in the town of Remagen, which is at that time the bridge was called Ludendorff, you know, and the engineers took over that bridge. I think our unit was one of the first ones to cross over the Rhine River, so that was called the Rhineland thing, and establish a thing on the other side of the Rhine. And those two big battles, you know, were the only ones that I was with. Which they give you 2 little battle stars on your ribbon for the.
And so can you describe what the Battle of the Bulge was like?
Well, it was a funny thing, you know, about that one, you know. The night before or the morning before it started, we were all, because we had dug in, and where that unit had dug in they call it the Ardennes Forest, you know, at the edge of the Ardennes Forest. Across there was where our unit was a big opening, and then you could see the dragon teeth over there, and you could see a couple of pillboxes across over there, you know. But we were dug in this side on the edge of the forest, and the infantry had set up their machine gun nests to cover, the machine guns to cover that open area, and the mortars right behind where we were. And when the night before the Battle of the Bulge started, we heard artillery, like a lot of artillery, boom, 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 and then we'd hear them coming over, and they would be like screaming. They used to call them screaming mimes. And they would come over like this. But then when they got to where we were, it would just go. They'd hit the pine trees, and they would just go pop. That's all. And they kept coming, for about 2 hours. You know, they were just coming. You could hear their guns going off over there, the other side. Well, nothing happened. The next day, everybody was trying to get their breakfast and everything else, you know, over with, and then me going around the guys, because you know by that time it was already cold, and those boys had to stand guard all night long, and there was a lot of frostbitten feet, which we had to make sure that I checked on, And sometimes I had to make sure that they took their shoes off and let me see their feet. And I'd go around, because when you stand guard, you don't do little runs around. You stand in one place and that's it for 2 hours or so, whatever their guard duty was. And anyway, that night came that evening again. It must have been around 9 o'clock in the evening or something like that. And they started again. The same thing, started again. Only this time, when the shells started hitting the pine trees, they started exploding. And pine trees started to fall all over the place. And that went on and on and on all night long. And then I would say before the dawn came, I could hear to our right where Tafoya was, the section where Tafoya was, in Company C, that there was a lot of small arm fire, a lot of burp guns going off, and everything happening on that part of the thing. In our sector, there was a lot of mortar firing towards the open space, but they were not coming through there because they already knew that was the machine guns were set there, but tanks were coming through there, big tanks, because there was a road right next to it, so that you could hear the tanks coming with you could hear they squeak, the tracks squeak and the motors running, and you could hear them coming. And of course, the Americans and the infantry knew that there were no match for that kind of assault. So they pick up their machine guns and retreat back with us, because the minute they would come in within firing range, they would destroy the whole thing, because they had superior tanks and everything else to us.
Mm-hmm.
But the shelling was so severe that it was very, they were just trees, pine trees were all over the place,
Yeah.
and it was, in other words, it was just like a deafening sound and everything going on. And then I remember one of the sergeants from the Company C, and two or three of his men came over to our company, and I remember Lieutenant Steens asking, "Where's your unit?" He said, "They're gone." He said, "What happened?" Well, he says they sprayed them in their dugouts. They killed them all. And he says, "If we can go along with you," I said, "You can come with us anytime you want."
Because you said they were in their sleeping bags and they couldn't get out?
They couldn't get out of the sleeping bags.
Yeah.
They said that. I don't know, because some of them, they had just given them those sleeping bags. We had never had sleeping. I never had a sleeping bag. I had a blanket, that's all, or an OD blanket, which I was glad I did, because these guys who lay on those sleeping bags that they had, and then they would turn around, and then they couldn't find the zipper to get out. And then when you get into a sleeping bag, you don't take your shoes off. You didn't take your shoes off at night.
Yeah. Did you, at any point, were you in contact with the enemy?
Me,
Yes.
directly,
Mm-hmm.
I had contact with them only when I came across a wounded German soldier,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed some help.
And you treated them just as you would an
I
American?
did, yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gave him some. I gave him some medication, shots usually, basically. Usually shots, because usually, unless I didn't come across too many that were not bandaged, because they did a very good job at doing that. They were very good. They were very. They were trained better in that respect than we were, but they didn't have the resources that we had. Like I carried the morphine, I carried the codeine for easing their pain.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only time I came across it, unless they were dead.
Yeah.
But
And you said that you heard the Malmedy
I heard
massacre.
we heard the shooting, you know, and that was all. We must have been, because you know, in a forest-like area, you can hear a lot of. I don't know how far away we were, but we did hear the shooting. Later on, we heard of what happened in Malmedy. You know, through the grapevine, we heard. Like I told you before, people like myself, we only knew what was happening 50 yards this way, 50 yards that way. We didn't know what was happening that way or this way. Oh, of course, after we passed, you know, but we didn't know anymore. Just hearsay. So.
How did you reunite with the American forces after you were cut off?
Oh, that was a very tough one, you know, because when we started finally made contact with the American forces coming back, we started. It was at night, and I remember getting closer to our unit, and the Americans, and American thought that we were a German unit coming in through that valley, and they started with the artillery, and the artillery that the Americans had at that time was deafening. In other words, it was not like artillery, it was like a machine gun, because they could fire so rapidly that you had no chance whatsoever. But so we started moving in, and they started firing on us, and our boys were getting hit right and left, and I couldn't keep up with it at all, you know, and I did the best I could with what I was able to do, and I knew about others that got hit slightly. I didn't even pay attention to them. And some of them I just gave them an ace bandage, told them to wrap around and go on. But others, some of them, like there was a couple of them, no more than a couple of them, about 3 or 4 were in a crater, and I went over there because a couple of them were hit, and I bandaged them up. And then for some reason or other, another kid over here that I knew got hit over here. He called me. He didn't call me. He called me. He didn't say medic. He called Bennie. You know, so I'm hit. So I said to these kids, I'll be back. I'm gonna check on him. And just as I left the crater, a direct hit that crater again. And of course, I didn't look back, you know. I went to the other young kid over there, and the other young kid was hit really bad. He was hit in the back because the shell had exploded behind him. Hit him in the back, in the spine, made a big hole on his back. And I knew I couldn't do anything for him except try to make him comfortable. And I did. I made him comfortable. I put him to sleep. And I don't know. I don't know whether I did the wrong thing or the right thing, but as little as I knew about injuries, which was nothing, and then I thought that, you know, as much as I could see in the dark, you know, I could see that he was gone.
Yeah.
But and then about that time, you know, about that time they broke through the lines and they found out that we were Americans, and the shelling stopped. And we were able to move in, you know, into the thing, you know, and of course, when I got back, and there was some medics from, I don't know where, what units or anything, they were there at the age when we were moving in, you know. I remember this captain telling this other medic, I says, pull that guy. And it was me. He says, come here. So he pulled me over, and he looked at me and he said, we're going to take care of you. I said, okay. I said, what do you mean you're going to take care of me? I got to go with my unit. I said, no, you're not going with them. He said, we're going to take care of you. So he told this guy, he said, you take him over to my tent, or the tent, not a tent, over there, and give him 288s. So blue 88s. Well, I said, what the hell is two blue 88s? I hope they're not laxatives. No, he says, you'll be all right. So the guy gave me 288s. In about 5 minutes, I was sleeping in one of those folding cots. And when I did wake up, I was mad because it wasn't me. Oh, we'll find your unit. We'll find it, and we'll take you to it back. And they took me back. Took me back, you know, to my unit. Because, and I asked the guy, I said, why did he pull me away? He says he didn't want you to see his your field jacket. I said, why? What was wrong with my field jacket? You didn't see it? I said, no. No, I didn't see nothing wrong with my field jacket. It was nothing torn or nothing. And he said, yeah, but you should have seen what was in front of it. So he didn't want you to see that, so that's why he gave you 288s and told you to go down.
The blood?
It was all covered with stuff, you know.
Yeah. Okay, and then this is also difficult, I know, for you to talk about. And do you want to talk about when you were wounded? Remember the date?
March 17th. It was March 17th, 1945. And we had pulled into this little village, a little small village, farm village, you know, and real nice little thing, you know, and we're all very very comfortable there because the sun was shining. Not by that time we had gotten over the snow and the cold, and everything else, and we were trying to get dry. My overcoat that I had underneath had already stopped dripping from the wet. The wet, had stopped dripping of water, and so it was a nice little area to, like I would say in New Mexico, La Resolana, Out- so we were really happy there. And then all of a sudden, as they were ready to move out from there and go forward again, I don't know whether it was a shell, a tank, or just a 88 gun, But I don't think so. I don't think it was an 88 gun because, from when it fired, it was really close to where we were, So I figured the rest of the guys were saying there's probably a tank, that was there. And this started firing as we were moving out. And I was moving out, running with this other three other guys, We were running for cover. And the shell hit. And when the shell hit, all I remember was that the other guys falling. And one of the boys, I remember that he had blood coming down his face, so he must have been hit in the head, And the other guy, I don't know where he was, but he got hit. And I remember that my left side just went out from under me, and I fell, And of course, I couldn't help the boys because I couldn't move at all. And one hand was hit, plus my thing. The only thing I could feel was on my back. I could feel warmth, a lot of warmth, and it was the blood that was coming out. And but I had one hand, and usually I carried my morphine syringe on my right bag. So I reached into my bag and I broke one syringe, and I gave it to me on my hand that I was hurt. And I asked the other boys if they wanted to do it. They said no, they're going to wait for the medic.
Can you wait? We need to change the tape here. Today is February 19th, 2011 for the U.S. Latino Oral History Project. And you said that the boys said they were waiting for the medic?
Yeah, they were waiting for the medic, So I guess, I'm not sure how they got a hold of the aid station. But it wasn't too long. I don't think it was long, as I don't know. Before, because I knew this one individual that I was with in the detachment. He was in the medical detachment. He was in the aid station, but he was a jeep driver. So when he showed up, and he helped the other two that were in the thing. And then he and the infantry boys loaded me up into the jeep, in the hood of the jeep, which the jeep was able to carry about 4 wounded in liters. And he took me back to the aid station. And then, of course, at the aid station, the battalion aid station, Sergeant Captain Bauer. And he looked at me, and I asked the same question when I'm going back, and he said, "You're going home." And then the chaplain came over. You know, he was a real nice man, the chaplain. And every time I used to come to the aid station for supplies, to refill my bags, you know, because I needed them. That chaplain would call me over, and he would say to me, "Well, before you go back," he said, "let's have a little Purple Heart medicine." And he'd give me a shot of whiskey, you know. And then when I went to the aid station after there, you know, he says, "Well, Benny," he says, "let's have another Purple Heart medicine." Okay? So I said, "Well, sir, if we're going to have Purple Heart medicine, you have one with me too." "Okay," he says, "I'll have one with you." So he gave me a shot of Purple Heart medicine, which was a shot of whiskey. And of course I was real happy going back on the ambulance, you know, across the Rhine River on a pontoon bridge.
So where were you treated at, and what happened to you after that?
Well, when they took me from the aid station, they took me in on an ambulance to a field hospital, which was an old house in Germany that had converted in. I mean, they had taken over and they cleared it, and they took me in there into one of the rooms. And I remember they only had one light and a light bulb in the middle. And where they were getting electricity, I don't know. But anyway, there was no beds. You were laying in the litter that they picked you up on. And there they did just preliminary treatment, like they gave you real blood, and instead of plasma, they gave you real blood, and different things like that. And of course, they took me into the surgery there, and they applied cast, you know, all the way from the chest down. And they gave me some blood, real blood in there. But in one of their bloods, they gave me the wrong type, you know, and that was really hard on me. Because, you know, you start going into convulsions and everything else, and they give you the wrong type. But anyway, they took care of it. I don't know how, but they took care of it. And then they loaded me up on then they took me to a potato field. A potato field, and the C-47 landed in a potato field in Germany, and they loaded about 30 of us in the C-47. They flew us to England. I remember that C-47, it had so many holes in the fuselage that if it went over where you had to use you didn't have to use a mask or oxygen because there was enough air coming into it. But it wasn't. They were pretty good. Mm-hmm. And they flew us to England, to a general hospital in England, an army general hospital, which they did more surgery there. And they put me on more Purple Heart medicine because they wanted to stimulate the blood, they said. Mm-hmm. So they gave you, that was a daily diet. They had to give it. And they said they had to give it to you to stimulate the blood. I don't know. Anyway, it was hard after they took me off of it because you got too expected it.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then when I came back, you wouldn't believe it. But when I came back, I got loaded back into the same ship I went over. Only it was converted to
A hospital ship?
to a hospital ship. The same ship, SS Argentina. I came back on it.
And so what were the extent of your injuries?
Well, what had, the way I understood, I got hit with 3 big pieces of shrapnel, big ones. One of them blew the femur of my leg out here. And the other one went into my groin. And the other one went into the side of the leg, up by the hip. But the one that was the worst one was the one that blew my femur out, because it also blew my femoral artery out, which cut all circulation to the lower portion of the leg. And today I would still have my leg, but in those days they didn't have the technology to suture arteries together. So as a result of that, I ended up losing the lower part of my leg. But they took a long time to repair they didn't want to amputate my leg at the hip. So it took a long time for them to restructure my femur. In other words, I was in traction in Beaumont General in El Paso, Texas, for about a year in traction there. So, but they were able to restructure my femur. And of course, the wounds that the shrapnel did took a long time for them to heal, because for some reason or other they carried a lot of the pants leg pieces inside, and of course they don't show up on x-ray, so they also had to wait until they worked themselves out.
And then your hand,
My hand was this finger here was partly blown off, but it turned out all right, even though it got disfigured and everything else, it turned out okay.
And so, how were you treated when you came home? How was that for you?
I remember when I came home the first time. I don't know whether Luis was there yet or not, or that right the next day or when. But anyway, I was able to get up out of bed, and I was able to walk on crutches. And I remember going to the PX and buying a little suitcase for what do you call it? Made out of cardboard. But anyway, I came home, and I came home on the bus. And I don't know what time, I think I got the bus in El Paso about 11 o'clock. But anyway, in Albuquerque I had to change buses and stay there a while, but I came back. When I arrived in Huatros, it was 7 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 in the morning, I don't remember. But it was early in the morning. The bus driver stopped there, and he took out my suitcase and put it on the ground. And my mother lived, about a block or two away from the bus, Anyway, when the bus left, I expected to see people, There wasn't a soul. Nowhere. So there I'm standing in the highway with that little suitcase, and I just kept going over my mind, how in the hell am I going to carry this thing and go to my mother's on crutches? And I couldn't imagine. And I probably looked up, and across the street, her aunt used to own a saloon. Yeah. And on the platform there was standing this kid, he must have been 6 years old. So he comes over, he walks over, he said, "Hi, mister." I said, "Well," I said, "I don't know how I'm going to carry this suitcase to my mom. Do you know Annie Trujillo?" "Oh yeah, I know where she lives." I said, "Would you please help me carry this case?" "Oh yeah, I'll help you carry it." So we walked over there, and he helped me carry this suitcase. And I don't remember whether I had $1 or something that I gave. So anyway, but all this time, for a long time, I kept thinking, I wonder who that little boy was. I wonder who he was. And then one time, my cousin Billy and I were talking, and I mentioned to him, I says, "I wonder who that little boy was." "That was me, Bennie." Yeah, that was me.
How funny. Were you in uniform
Yeah.
when you were on the crutch?
Oh,
So you
yeah.
came home, so everybody knew that you were
Yeah.
a
So
GI.
he said, "No, that was me, Bennie. I had stayed at my Aunt Susan's house that night." He said, "My mother said I had to stay at my Aunt Susan's house. And I got up real early, and I was standing out there when the bus went by." And he says, "Yeah, and I knew who you were, but I didn't say nothing." So,
Did everybody back in Watros already knew that you were wounded?
oh yeah,
Yeah, it was on March 17th, we were painting the church. I was painting the altar. And my brother-in-law was the agent for the railroad. And he came over with a telegram. And that we still have that telegram that said that Bennie was wounded. So we all knew his mother was there. I think the whole town was there because the women used to work in the church a lot. And that's the day we found out he was wounded. Yeah.
Can you tell us what awards and citations and accommodations you received in World War II?
Well, I don't know. I got them written down here, on my thing, but
You received the Bronze Star, didn't you?
I received the Bronze Star, yes, but the Bronze Star was awarded by Congress in 1947 to World War II infantry, combat infantry men, and combat infantry medics. Then I was awarded the Silver Star. I mean I can't remember them from there. They're on the back. And then then the Purple Heart naturally was awarded to me in England. They pinned it on the pillow. And then of course, if you kept from going into the brig or going AWOL or anything, they gave you the Good Conduct Medal in the middle. So you got that if you were a good boy. And then of course they got what is the next one?
The Europe, Africa, Middle East.
Oh,
Ribbon and medal?
that one. That one is where you get it when you went to Europe or to Africa, and of course The thing about it is, when you go, when you participate into major battles, they give you a little star that is into that. And then you got the Victory Medal, you got the American Theater Ribbon Medal, and I don't know what others there is in there.
World War II Victory Ribbon and Medal. You got your enlisted medical branch insignia, the Army Tech 5 insignia, and your medical combat badge.
The one that I am most proud of
Yes.
is the combat medical badge. That's the one I'm most proud of, because you couldn't get that unless you served at least 30 days in the front lines. You couldn't get it.
Wow. That's who put together the frame?
My son-in-law did that.
Okay. And can you introduce your daughter?
This is my daughter Julie, and she's like a godsend to me and Louise,
Excellent.
and I'm very proud of what she does.
Excellent.
This right here.
Okay. Do you believe the government took care of the troops during the war and its veterans today?
I think they took care of the troops as good as they could do it at that time. You know, doing for the conditions at that time and everything else. I sometimes I believe, because our division was more or less trained to fight, or to not to fight. I never fought anybody, but being a medic, you know, but the infantry boys and their equipment that they had and everything else like that, their equipment that they had was basically for the Pacific theater, not the European theater. So when we went to Europe, and then we started in the winter in Europe, our equipment was
It wasn't designed for
it
that.
wasn't
Yeah,
designed for nothing like that.
that cold.
Was not for the cold. When it got to 30 degrees below zero and the snow was 6 feet high in some areas, no. But, you know, being that the American soldier, I guess because they were not professional soldiers, they were civilians most of their lives, they adapt to anything. And they did a tremendous job with what they had, and they made it work for them.
Was it difficult for you to adjust back to civilian life?
No, I don't think so. I think that I think the most thing that I did miss the military life. I missed the fact that I belonged to one of the greatest organizations in the world. I missed that when I left. But knowingly that I had a lot of help adjusting to civilian life and the way of life that I had to live because of my wife Louise, which stood by my side from then on. I remember when they had to do major surgery on my leg, and the Veterans Hospital was still at Fort Logan, and we used to rent on Champa Street, and she'd take a bus pregnant with her from 15th Street and Champa Street all the way to Englewood, and then transferred to a little shuttle that would go to Fort Logan, and she was 8 months pregnant to go see me in the hospital at Fort Logan. So I had a lot of help from her, even though today, once in a while, we argue about this and that. She's the one that helped me be what I was. She helped me go through school, and when I went to watchmaker school, and helped me with that. Helped me get a job with a organization that I lasted for. I worked with them for 47 years afterwards, because I didn't believe to be in a leech for the government. So I worked 47 years for this corporation and middle management. And even though I went to watchmaker school, I didn't do much watchmaking in the industry. I did mostly middle management school.
Did you use the GI Bill for your education or to secure a home loan?
No.
You didn't use the GI Bill?
No, I did use the GI, yes, to go to watchmaker school. It was two and a half years. I did use it. But you know, watchmaker school wasn't all about learning how to be a watchmaker. The watchmaking school that I went to had to do with public relations. It had to do with all kinds of things that were related to that industry. So I learned a lot.
And the government gave you a brand new car.
Yeah, the first all amputees at that time got issued a brand new car.
What did you get?
I remember I got everybody else, all the amputees, because we used to meet, together, amputees in the city of Denver. We used to be, and we used to meet at times. But they all got Oldsmobiles, because that was the first Oldsmobile with an automatic shift. That was the first car with automatic shift. So, but I wanted a Chevrolet, because my dad had a Chevrolet, and everybody that I knew had a Chevrolet. So I wanted a Chevrolet. Well, I couldn't get a Chevrolet with an automatic shift. So I trained my artificial leg to be able to shift
Use the clutch.
a stick shift, and it worked.
What year was your Chevrolet?
1947.
1947, yeah. The Fleet Light, beautiful car.
The car, I don't know how much the car was worth, but the government allowed you to buy a brand new car, would give you a voucher to the dealer for $1,600. And when I went to get to a Chevrolet dealer to get a car, they told me at the time, I said, well, in order for you to get a car, to go up to this amount of money on this voucher, we have to put all kinds of accessories on it.
Had a spotlight and everything.
I said, well, what are you going to put in? I said, well, I don't know, what do you want? The only thing I could think of was spotlights. So I had spotlights put on my car. Oh man, it was really shiny, the spotlights.
It was a beautiful car.
A visor on the windshield, a real fancy hood ornament and things like that, But they fixed it so I could spend $1,600.
Would you change anything about your World War II experience?
No, I don't think so. I just wished that I would have had more education. When I was in the military, I would have liked during World War II to have been an officer. I don't know why. Didn't, but I didn't. I didn't have the education to apply for OCS or anything like that. But I would have liked to have been an officer. My son-in-law Julie's husband, they say, was a captain in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. So it's an honor to be an officer. Not that my two little T5 stripes, I was proud of them, you know.
Mhm.
And I earned them the hard way, but it was okay because I respected a lot of I had a lot of respect for the non-commissioned officers that were in our unit. They were smart.
And then let's talk about, then you got married after the war. You get married to Louise, and when did you guys get married?
March 12th,
No, October 12th.
October 12th, 1946.
And can you tell me about your family that you have?
My family that I have now.
Well, yeah, after you got married, your children, and kind of lay out your family after you guys got married.
After we got married, we lived on Champa Street. Then we moved to Fort Logan. They had barracks for veterans there. We lived in Fort Logan for a while, and then Julie was born at St. Luke's Hospital in 1949.
1947.
I'm 47.
1947. And then Benjamin came around in 1949 at St. Luke's also. And so when they were about, Benjamin was 2
He
years
was
old.
3 and I was 5, I think,
What? When
when we moved.
we decided we had to move from Fort Logan because they were going to close it back. So Benny and I got in the car one evening with the kids. We drove up Hamden, straight up Hamden. We thought we're going to drive straight out that way. We got to Eudora Street, so we turned down the street there, came down to the corner. There was a show home, and so we got out of the car, went over, and said we'd like to buy a house.
No, but the people, we went to the show house, which was on Dahlia Street, about 3200 South Dahlia. And we walked in, and with the kids, and we said to him, to the salesperson, "You'd like to buy a house?" And I said, we said, "What do you have that you can?" We have that house over there, which was on Eudora. Oh, I see. Can we look at it? Well, you can go ahead and look at it. The guy didn't even say, "Well, here's the keys, go look at it inside," or nothing. We just, he said, "You can go look at it." And so Luis and I, you know, we just, well, let's go look at it. So we went over there, and we had to look in through the windows to see what the inside looked like, you know. And then, so we came back, and he said, and we said to the guy, "We like the house. We will go ahead and buy it." And then he started taking the information down a little bit, and then his attitude changed a little bit after he just started taking the information on the house. He says, "Well, we'll see if we can put you through."
But we never got a key to go look inside.
No,
it.
he never gave us the key. He wouldn't show us the inside of the house. I don't know whether he thought that
Maybe he thought we couldn't
afford it, or what he thought, or
whatever.
anything.
We didn't even think that way
Yeah.
at all.
We didn't think that way because, you know, we never thought. Coming from where we came from, we didn't know.
We didn't know discrimination.
We didn't know discrimination.
At all.
And so it was pretty obvious they didn't want a Latino family moving into the neighborhood.
That's right. They
Probably,
didn't.
yeah.
They
Right.
didn't. They didn't want it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And as the results are, you know, naturally, the what do you call it? We bought it under what is it, what they called it at that time? It was a government agreed, guaranteed loan on it.
FHA? was that
After
right?
we put down the payments and everything. And no, it wasn't FHA. It was, I don't know what they
Something,
call it,
yeah.
but anyway, the government guaranteed
Hmm.
full payment if anything, if we defaulted on it. But anyway, as the results are, you know, they approved it within a short period of time. And we moved in, and all the, we had no lawn, no nothing in the house. And then one weekend, it was a little shortly after we moved in, all the other veterans that were in Fort Logan they had moved out of Fort Logan, they came on a Sunday morning. They rototilled our yard and everything, and they planted our lawn and everything in. They planted our lawn, and
Well, that night there was a big snowstorm.
yeah, the big snowstorm,
So
and
it really
the lawn
helped
came
our
out
lawn,
beautiful.
yeah.
Our lawn was just beautiful. Anyway, they took care of it. The veterans from
Wow.
that hadn't moved out from Fort Logan yet came over and did our yard. And then we started getting the neighbors on one side and the neighbors across the street, and they were the nicest people that I had the pleasure of knowing.
Our
All of
kids
them.
grew up with them and
Our
went
kids grew
through
up with
grade
them.
school and high school and everything, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that the next door to us lived Dean and his family, and Dean came from a family that wealthy family, and he was a World War II, but he was a pilot in South Pacific, and his father used to own a big furniture store in East Colfax, and they had a home in Cherry Hills. But Dean was like, he was Dean, you know, a nice man. So one time Louis said, oh, he said, we got to get some furniture. Some furniture for the bedroom and the front room. And
the
he says,
kitchen.
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. He says, I'll take care of it. And he did, and they're still there.
Yeah, this is it.
Excellent.
We had it, yeah.
That's excellent. Lots of stories here. Did you join any organizations after you got back from the war, the GI Forum or any of those?
I didn't join the GI Farms because I didn't know anything about it. Nobody ever contacted me or anything about it. I did join the VFW, and then I joined the Disabled American Veterans Organization, which they have been tremendously helpful. Even though I get labels every day, I get labels for the donation. You know, anyhow, and then the Purple Heart Association later on, but the VFW. When I was very active with I was active in the VFW. I used to be a Boy Scout troop. I used to be a Boy Scout master for a troop in Sheridan, and most of my boys that I had in the troop turned out to be really good citizens.
Excellent.
Good citizens.
So you had Julie and then Benjamin, and did you have
Patrick.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Patrick, go ahead. Louis.
Patrick was born in 58, and he was born at Porter Hospital, and he is now he went to Metro State College. He went to Mullen High School, and graduated there, and went on to Metro, and he graduated there with a degree, and he got his certified pilot is what he is. But in order for him to fly, his eyes would not work, so he went to
Aerotech.
Aerotech and became a mechanic. So now he's a mechanic for Southwest Airlines in Phoenix, doing very well.
Excellent.
The only thing is he has MS. He contracted MS. I don't know when, but they just found it about 10 years ago. He has good days and bad days.
And Julie, do you want to let them know what you're doing with your life? And
I work for a federally funded grant program through, they're called TRIO programs, so they're programs that are aimed at helping low-income, first-generation and underrepresented students go through the educational pipeline and go into post-secondary education. So I am in a post-secondary program, and I coordinate the advising services for the students that come into the program up at UNC.
you have children and a grandchild?
I have 2 children. They're adult children. They're both in their 30s. My daughter lives in Austin, Texas, and my son is in Steamboat Springs, and my son has a daughter. He's married and has a daughter who will be 2 in March.
Excellent. Thank you.
And our son Benjamin, he also went to Metro, and he would have graduated that same year that he got. They had an auto accident, and he was killed.
What year was that?
In
1970.
1970, and he was also a pilot, and I believe that out of the two, between Patrick and Benjamin was a better pilot, and he was very good. He was very good as what he did. Benjamin was a Boy Scout also. He got his Eagle Scout, and he also was a musician. He could do anything that he wanted to do in the short period of life that he had. So, and then we lost him,
He was 21?
He was 21. And, just very sad that our God took him away, when he did, But I think he would have done great things with his life, because that's the kind of person he was, that he could achieve whatever he set his mind to do. He taught himself, even though we gave him music lessons, but nobody played piano lessons. Basically, is what we gave him. But everything else, he learned how to play. He learned by himself.
Excellent.
So,
Sorry.
but we have Luis and I. We're very fortunate to have a daughter like Julie. Partly we gave her education. The other part she gave herself. And Patrick left, so we're very fortunate, even with all the problems that my son has and all of that. We're very fortunate to have what we have.
Julie's happily married to a wonderful, wonderful young man. Oh, he's the best son-in-law in the world.
And what does he do?
He teaches at UNC,
Excellent.
and so he's a professor in sport and exercise science, but his specialty is outdoor education and experiential education, working with people that would like to be gym teachers.
Cool.
And of course, my son Patrick is married to a lady by the name of Virginia. And
Do they have children?
she had 2 children prior. My son never had. and we had children.
Would you like to give any advice to future Latinos listening to this interview?
Oh, you mean the two older ones like myself, or
Or any
younger ones?
or some
anything?
students that might see this someday and hear about your
There
story?
were. I feel that that if you're a Latino of any kind like that, I mean, I don't think you should let barriers stand in front of you. I don't think that would be an idea, and I don't think you should carry the Latino thing on your shoulders, because it's not. It's something that is there. If you're a Latino, you ought to be proud of what you are, and then do the best you can in the world. Most of all, say you're a veteran, especially the young veterans that are coming out of the most recent wars. If you have an opportunity to get an education, get it. Get the education, because that's the only way you're going to progress in our life. I was fortunate enough to not to have the education that is available to these young men today, to go as far as I did. But without an education, it's very difficult for you to do. You get an education, and then there's nothing in the world that can stop you. Nothing.
It's excellent.
Because they hadn't stopped my daughter, hasn't stopped my son from going the way he did. Look at him. He's a MS, has MS, and he's still a lead mechanic, even with that. But you know why? Because he's got an education. He's got an education. He's got an aerospace degree, plus the mechanics of aerotech. So he's got an education, and they cannot take that away from him. No one.
It's excellent.
So therefore, an education it's the major thing for Latinos of all kinds.
Is there anything words you want to leave for your family? Or anything? Any future generations?
You know, I wish my family of the future generations, I just like them to be as resourceful as they can and contribute. Like my daughter. My daughter could be working for a private industry of some sort. She'd probably be making a lot more money, but here she is. She's helping students that are unable to get their higher education. You know, so I would like from any children of mine to, say like my great granddaughter now and everything else, to use my daughter as a role model, because she has given her life to helping younger generation.
Excellent.
You know.
Would the two of you like to add anything?
We've had a happy 64 years of marriage and 3 beautiful children and grandchildren. We've had a very good life, Benny and I have. No problems of any kind. Never had any, our heartbreak was Benjamin, and that's the biggest one. And our mothers that died, but you know,
Yeah.
those things happen.
But you know, going back and thinking about that is to say, you know, we've had our generation has had a great life compared to our mothers.
Oh yeah.
our mothers, because our mothers really had to work hard, looking back and see what they had to do, and everything else with all the obstacles that were in front of them, but they still made it. And so we ourselves are very lucky to be where we are today and live this long, you know. And I myself specifically, I think I've lived a very, very good life in spite of all the things that happened to me, and I'm not at all say that I wish that this would have never happened to me, because I'd do it all over again if I had to, and I had the opportunity. I'd do it all over again. And I was so proud to have been a soldier in the United States Army. I was proud of that. And that was it. And I think I don't have any regrets of what happened to me. None.
God bless you, Ben. Well, I think that
He's
concludes.
fine as long as he can go out and plant seeds in the ground.
Plant tomatoes.
He's already looking for seeds to go out and plant.
Well, that was my grandmother's bringing.
Well, thank you both. Thank you for doing this, okay?